Hello everybody, it's Tuesday, February 14th, it's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day everybody. Got a good question today that I took a screenshot of that was in the private Facebook group for Linchpin from Tyler S. And he was going to post it for and ask me anything, but I'm going to snag it before that happens because I think it's great and people will really, hopefully benefit from it. And it's about food and nutrition, which is always a hot button topic for all of us. So I'll read Tyler's question and then kind of give my thoughts on it, and hopefully everybody enjoys it. So this is what Tyler wrote. It says, okay, every week has 7 days. Hypothetically, each day could be made up with 3 full meals and 1 snack. That's 28 opportunities to fuel my body. How many of those meals are required to be healthy, clean meals in order to live a healthy, fit life? Great question. And he says, for full disclosure, I'm not looking to justify my poor eating habits that pop up from time to time, but I'm trying to gauge the significance of those deviations over the course of a year. Is 3 to 5 indulgences all it takes to totally derail progress, or is there a fair amount of leniency? Thanks and have a great day. Fantastic question. Okay, so, got my thoughts written down here. But before we do that, just a quick disclaimer. Anytime something like this gets brought up, we're going to have to categorize food a little bit. Healthy. Well, if you say something's healthy, what does that mean? It must mean that something is unhealthy, or the word healthy wouldn't exist in isolation. If you're eating clean, well, there must be a way to not eat clean. Other foods are not as good, not as pristine. Some people like the term cheat meal. Some people are immediately racked with anxiety because you have labeled a food and now that food is a villain. And so wherever you fall on the spectrum of having phraseology, use whatever phraseology works for you and doesn't, make you crazy. So for me, I don't have any particular problem using the word cheat meal or something like that. It doesn't suddenly make me realize that any food in the world, if I understand the density of the nutrients, its macronutrients breakdown, can be worked into a diet with the appropriate quality and quantity, that no food is solely evil. Well, maybe there are a couple out there, but no food is solely evil, and there are a few that are just utopia. So again, choose your terminology. I'm going to throw out the term cheat meals, things like that. Don't get wrapped around the axle about that. I think we all know what we're talking about. Okay, so here we go. So I would say, when I anyway think about good foods or bad food, there's another thing that triggers people. Good food or bad food. In my mind, again, if you want to label it all as good, great. But in my mind, when I say good food versus bad food, the good foods I have a really huge strike zone of error with. And foods that in my mind, because the terminology doesn't bother me, that I say are bad foods, if you will, or unhealthy foods or whatever, I have a really small strike zone. So for example, if I accidentally eat twice as much broccoli as I should, I'm going to be really full, and that's probably the end of those repercussions, even if I do that on a regular basis. If I accidentally eat twice the amount of ice cream that I should on a regular basis, or I always have double the Dairy Queen blizzards or whatever it is, that's going to add up really, really fast. And it will be quite obvious that was not a good course of action for a quote-unquote healthy life. So in my mind, that's my oversimplified terminology that I use. But anyway, getting back to Tyler's question. 7 days a week, 3 meals a day, 1 snack a day. So that's 28 times a week you could potentially consume food. How many, he asks, are required to be healthy, clean meals to live a healthy life? And how many indulgences, cheat meals, treats, whatever you want to call it, can you have without derailing your progress? So as a very simple thing, let's look at that with the old 80-20 rule that people throw around all the time. Try to eat clean 80% of the time. 20% I allow myself these wonderful indulgences that are delicious and make us, make living on planet Earth just a little bit more pleasurable. If you applied the 80-20 rule to what Tyler laid out, 21 meals, 7 snacks per week, here's what you would get. Out of the 21 meals, 17 should be clean. The other 4 could be something other than that. But 17 out of 21 should be clean. 7 snacks, if you did the 80-20 rule, it's 5.5 clean, 1.5 other. So it just depends on how you want to round that up or round it down, okay? But if we just looked at the number 28, well then 22 should be clean out of 28 total times of eating, and 6 out of those total 28 times could be other, but 22 out of 28 would be clean, going by the 80-20 rule. It's a lot of numbers, I know. Numbers are boring, especially if you're not seeing them in front of you. But that 80-20, I did that just kind of as a thought experiment to get your head moving and whatnot. I don't think it's that simple, and I don't think that 80-20 rule actually works or is meaningful for this question anyway. Because what I think is critically important and different for every single person watching or listening or struggling with this particular topic is how many quote-unquote indulgences or deviations or cheats or treats or snacks or whatever you want to call it, how many of those can you have and still have the performance that you want, the body composition that you want, the long-term ideally health and longevity that you want? Well, that's different for each person because each person means a little something different when they say that they had a treat or something delicious or an indulgence or whatnot. Is your indulgence a very small cup of ice cream? Is that what you consider an indulgence and slightly, deviating from your diet? Or for you, is it half the pint? Or is it the whole pint? Well, that's a really big difference as to how many indulgences, quote unquote, you can have if you consider an indulgence a small cup of ice cream or the pint of ice cream. Again, so you kind of have to define for you, what does that mean? Do you consider your indulgence or a little deviation a couple small cookies? Or is it 3 or 4 monster-sized cookies that you get in the grocery store? Is it a small slice of pie or is it half the darn pie? What's your indulgence? So all those things kind of have to get figured out. For me, I'll give you some real-world examples because I have a sweet tooth. Sugar's delicious and I love tasty treats, and it takes daily discipline for me not to eat all the tasty treats in the world at every single meal, because I could happily do that. I would probably significantly degrade the quality of my life and die early, which is why I don't want to do it, but man, I could do it easily. So anyway, for me, if I go out to a restaurant and they have good cheeseburgers, you better believe that I'm going to get a cheeseburger. And you better believe, this is just for me, this is not how you have to roll. This is what I've learned my parameters and strike zone can be. And you better believe I'm going to eat it with the bun. I went through many a year where I took the bun off the burger, and I wish I could get those days back. So if I go out, I'm going to have a cheeseburger, I'm going to eat it with the bun, and here, for me, I am not going to consider that an indulgence. Cheeseburger with the bun. I'm not going to consider that going off course. I'm going to consider that perfectly fine for my life and my long-term health and fitness goals, given what I know most of my other meals look like. I'm not going to sweat it at all. For me, my indulgence would be if with that cheeseburger, I allowed myself to have the monstrous pile of French fries that come with it. So I have learned for me, my body, my metabolism, my activity level, my age, my all of that. Burger with the bun every now and then, absolutely good to go. That happens on a regular basis and I eat a pile of fries with it, my jeans are going to start to fit a little bit tight. I am going to notice that. But that's just me. That's my level that I can get away with that I've learned over the course of the year. For other people, their indulgence, first of all, some people, when they just heard me say that, probably dropped dead out of shock, because other people's indulgence might be the burger itself, and they can't believe that I don't consider that an indulgence, quite frankly. Again, I don't eat it every day at every meal. But for other people, they've learned about themselves, the burger is the indulgence. Great, cool, fantastic. My life is not your life is not my life, and person A, B, or C, they're all living their different lives either. Other people's indulgence might be an order of nachos to start, then the burger, with the fries, and a soda, and a dessert afterwards. That might be their indulgence. So mine's the fries, not the burger. Somebody else's is just the burger, period. And then somebody else is that amazing spread that I just said, from appetizer to meal to soda to dessert. So again, how many indulgences can you have? What the heck do you mean by indulgence, right? So you have to get that figured out for yourself and figure out where your strike zone is. I know other people who shall remain nameless that are so rigid, and I'm not saying rigid in a bad way, just again, it is what it is, are so rigid with what they eat that their indulgence would be, I don't know, instead of having steamed vegetables with their fish, they had something other than steamed vegetables, whatever, a small piece of bread. That would be them going wildly off the rails. Again, to each their own. Again, find what works for you, and the only way that you're going to find what works for you is by probably, tracking what you're eating, whether that's writing it down, whether it's weighing and measuring, whatever it is, unless you have a photographic memory in a mind like a steel trap. If you're trying to see where you hum as a human being, as an athlete, as a whatever, and where you can deviate that from, if you don't pay attention to what you're doing, you're never going to get any kind of useful data. So you're going to have to track it in some way, shape, or form. So find something which works well for you and track that. Oh yeah, I see somebody mentioning, they enjoy a wonderful ice cold beer as their indulgence or whatnot. Right, there's that whole other category of, depending upon what you like to consume in liquid form, that's going to wildly deviate your strike zone, how often you can get away with it. Are you talking, one drink every now and then, or a much higher quantity on a much more regular tempo? All of those things are going to play into there as well. So let's see. I have finally found my sweet spot I've done everything from being, looking back on it's crazy, I was so strict for so long that I was not a lot of fun to be around, and it wasn't sustainable. Even though I did it for years, I was so strict. Weighing and measuring, very, very limited treats, indulgences, whatever you want to say. And even in the time that I was doing it, I knew that I would not be doing this for the rest of my life because it was not sustainable. But for me, I was at that phase, and it was useful in the moment to learn about myself. I learned a lot about nutrition. I learned a lot about quality. I learned a lot about quantity. And I learned a lot about what worked for my personal life. I've gone too far the other way, where I've allowed myself too many indulgences. And again, the jeans start fitting a little bit too tight. You got to rein things in. And I've, after many, many years, have found what is sustainable. Happy with my body composition, happy with my performance, happy that I can go out into the world with friends and go to a restaurant and have something delicious to eat, and it's fantastic. That's where I want to be, and you need to find that for yourself. And as a matter of fact, that's my biggest takeaway. If it's not sustainable, you're doomed. You're absolutely doomed. So I can't tell you how many indulgences you can have with you failing to meet your goals. That's going to be through experimentation. But there's a interview that I did that just got released today on BTWB's YouTube channel and all the podcasts. It's a very not random interview that we do every week with Bosman. He wasn't present for this one. He was doing something else. So I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Lawrence Chalet. I highly recommend you listen to that interview. It's very not random. Number 97 just came out today. But Lawrence is a 11-time competitor at the World's Strongest Man competition. He's a huge human being. I've met him several times in person. He's a mountain of a person. He's 6 foot whatever, and at his heaviest weighed about 375 pounds, and could back squat 550 pounds for a set of 20. I'll go ahead and say that again. 550 pound back squat for a set of 20 reps. He has lost 100 pounds. He's down to a svelte 275 pounds. And he did it. He's had, struggled with some food things over his entire life, but he's found a way to lose 100 pounds that was sustainable for him. And during the interview, he told me that he actually still allows himself just a little bit of chocolate darn near every single solitary day of his life. But allowing that little piece, that controlled, little bit each day, keeps him on course. Whereas somebody told him, hey, you know what? I know that you love chocolate. You're never going to eat it again. Sorry. He would have crashed and burned. It wouldn't have been sustainable. Or, yeah, you're only going to be allowed to have it Thursday at 7 p.m. if you were totally strict all the other days. That wasn't going to be sustainable either. So he found what works for him, and he's down 100 pounds and has significantly boosted his longevity, his health. Really cool. So whatever it is for you, you got to find what works. Absolutely got to find what works. Do a little experimentation and make sure it's sustainable. So that's it. Tyler, fantastic question. I know I couldn't give you an exact answer to your question, but hopefully the context helped and it benefited some other folks as well. Have a great day, and we'll talk later.